Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Product in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on some of the exceptional product leaders we have as part of the LA product community. Really excited for today's episode. Alec Miller is here joining us.
Hey, Ethan, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, really excited to chat with you, Alec. There's some really incredible stuff happening in the renewables market, and really excited to have an expert on it come and chat with us.
Yeah, looking forward.
Awesome. Before we get to that, I just want to mention our sponsors. Product in LA is brought to you by Uruit, URUIT.com. They're a digital product studio with 15 years of experience partnering with companies that want to challenge their industries. Whether their client is a startup or an industry titan, they can provide them with the right blend of creative design and robust engineering to create an experience that people love. They're a team of skilled experts that will help strategize, validate, design, and develop new products or improve existing ones by becoming an extension of the company's team. To learn more about their services, go to uruit.com. That's URUIT.com. Product in LA is also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. PMA-LA, available at pma.la, is over 3,000 of LA's top product talent. It's a social networking and meetups group. They have meetings across Los Angeles about once a month. They also have the mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to help build a more robust next generation of product people. To learn more about PMA-LA, go to pma.la. And to learn more about the mentorship program, go to pma.la/mentorship. Very excited to have Alec Miller on the podcast today. He is the Director of Digital Products at Private Energy Partners, and his past roles have included VP of Product and Strategy at Narrative Wave, Director of the Western Region and Specialized Technology for Johnson Matthey, and Director of Business Solutions for Catalytic Solutions. And one interesting fact you may find by looking through his profile on LinkedIn is that he actually created a voice-activated smart device that gets hot water ready with virtually no waste. So, Alec, tell me the story on this one. I imagine this is when the time it takes for the water to run out in the shower for it to actually warm up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was sort of the problem I was working on was, you get up in the morning, turn the shower on and watch all that nice clean water go down the drain. And there's a lot of, you're wasting a lot of water and energy embodied in that water to get it to you,
Oh,
right? So, there's some ways to solve that problem, but really what I was thinking about was, you got to make this really easy or I'm not going to do it or nobody else is ever going to sort of, you know, implement a product to solve this. And so I was trying to think about how do you make this, really easy. You get up in the morning, you're not thinking about these problems. You just want to get in the shower and go on. And
yeah.
so, yeah, so that's sort of how I came at it was, okay, this was the early days of Alexa and sort of, hey, can I use that so that you could just say, hey, get my hot water ready. And it would, recirculate the water. So, brings you got cold water in your pipes. You can bring that cold water to your shower and put it back into the hot water heater without a whole lot of, hardware changes to your house. And just make it easy to do with a simple voice command. And so that's what that was. Yeah.
That's an incredible use of Alexa in a very mindful way. Did you actually were you able to bring it to market?
I did not, and that was one of the things I learned was, about myself was, that was a, direct to consumer type product, and I realized, hey, this is beyond my skill set to do that. I just sort of, built it up, ideated it, created the prototypes, proved that it would work, and that's as far as I got with it. But hopefully, someone will continue that idea and bring it to market.
That's terrific, and I think it sounds true with the trend of paying attention to the environment and being careful of resources. I'd love to go back and learn more about how you got into this space, into product. Like, what was your journey into product and renewables?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I had, been part of a team where we had started one software product around, materials and commodities and things. And part of that solution worked, and part of it didn't really. And so I came out of that really thinking about, what didn't work in what we did, and what could we do better. And when I joined Catalytic Solutions, one of my first days, I went for a meeting with the CEO, and he said, "Okay, I want you to take some of this technology, and I want you to bring it to market," which is pretty sort of broad, remit.
Yeah.
And okay, how are we going to do that? And these were products around the area of cleaning up the air emissions from diesel gensets or
Mm.
gas turbines or boilers and things. So that was sort of my beginning of the journey into the sort of the clean energy space, and also my beginning of the journey of sort of how I started to think about products. He sat me down in his office and he said, "I'm going to tell you a story about glue." And
That's a
I
great
said,
start.
"Yeah, that's a
Okay.
great start." I thought, okay. Uh, so he had run a very large division of a big sort of company, and they were making glue. And he told me the story, and he said, when you make glue, everybody sort of thinks, well, the glue needs to stick better. It's glue, right? That's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And he said that one of the things he had learned was don't think about the glue itself, think about what your customers are doing. And he said that they had gone
Oh,
out, yeah, and interviewed customers, right? And not a new concept, but it's something that's hard to get the glue out of your head, right? He said we went out in his case and interviewed customers, and their customers were gluing boxes in quick manufacturing lines. And so when they talked to the customers said, well, yeah, of course glue is going to stick, but what we really care about is the number of boxes we can stick per hour or per day. So what really mattered to them was the speed that the glue would dry, not whether it's stuck or not, because all glue was sticky. And so,
wow.
yeah, it was this journey of saying, hey, sometimes it's really hard to get your product out of your head. And he was telling me, don't start with these products in mind. I just told you to commercialize products, but don't start there, right? Start by thinking about what is it your customers really care about that is tangentially related to your product. And so that was kind of my journey into, hey, this is interesting. I need to think about products in a different way, and going forward, that sort of formed how I sort of approach it now.
That's amazing. And that was the CEO
That's the
who
CEO.
dropped
Yeah,
that. Wow, that's
yeah,
amazing. And you can think of just kind of so many thoughts are swirling around in my mind. Again, like yeah, like when you're supposed to do something with glue, you're thinking about is it going to be sticky or is it going to be dry faster? But for him, it was
yeah.
all about, not surprisingly, going back to the customer and their needs, identifying how are they using the glue, how is it being actually utilized in their process? Because no one
Yeah,
really buys glue just to buy glue. You're buying glue
right,
because you're making something else.
right, exactly. And obviously, this is the fundamentals of the needs based approach to products, right? Which is also called jobs to be done, right? Category of thinking about products, right? But that was my beginning of the journey. Was it's really hard not to think about your product. It's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to think about the customer in this journey, right? Um, so that's how I got started, and that was the beginning of my journey into clean tech and energy as well.
Did that continue in your journey? Like, did this idea of, let me tell you about glue, is it popped up over the course of your career since then?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had it, when I was with Johnson Matthey, we had a product that was called a diesel particulate filter. So we were, cleaning up the emissions from a diesel engine. If you ever seen an old truck on the road, they can put out some black looking soot, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
pretty obvious what they're doing, right? And so you can sort of clean up, 99% of that with a filter. And so at the time, we were the leader in cleaning up the emissions from stationary gen sets, right? So if you have a hospital, for example,
Okay.
you want backup power when the power goes out, and so you typically would have put a diesel gen set there that turns on when the power goes out, um,
Right.
and you would have been required in California to put a diesel particulate filter on that gen set to clean it up. Um, so this journey became part of that too, which is at some point, we had some competitors coming in, and things were slowing down, and so we went out and talked to some customers and took that kind of needs based approach. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but we sort of did that glue based thing, on the diesel particulate filters, and we figured out that what do the customers care about, and not surprisingly, they care about reliability, right? If you're a
Yeah.
hospital, you want that genset to turn on when the power goes off, right? That's all you care about with respect to that genset. And so the filters are required, they're there, but they're sort of getting in your way of that, hey, I just want it to turn on, right?
Yeah.
So, that was a fairly expected insight. The hard part was, okay, how do we take that insight and then tie it back to the product we have, and somehow, right, somehow make them connected. And we eventually figured out that, in fact, if there's a maintenance thing that you were supposed to do on these gen sets, and people were not really doing them.
Huh.
We made this little device that sort of told you, hey, you should be doing your maintenance on your gen set. And when you do that, it makes this filter work better. And you can sort of monitor the whole thing in this one little device that we've now included. So we're sort of solving your problem around those two things together by helping you make sure that you have maintained that gen set for reliability. And by the way, that's part of our product too, that has that nice filter on it. Right?
That's great. And I've read about, and I've seen challenges where you have, different touch points. And when you're trying to increase engagement, it's easy to have a frequent touch point. You're doing something like Instagram or TikTok or Facebook where people touch it every day. It's much more challenging when you have rare touch points. Like, for instance, if you're buying a car or buying a home, or if you are thinking about a backup generator that maybe gets touched a couple times a year, maybe.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It sounds like you help solve, kind of double whammy of, helping them make it more efficient, but also reminding them about the value of this product that they have that they may not even use, but they understand that it's there if they ever do need it.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? We could have come to that same conclusion by looking at the touch points, right? And that's another way to do it. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I'd love to go almost even further back. I think I read that you were a commodity trader before you even started any of this. Was that in the energy sector? Is that where kind of this, this drive to join the energy and, resource management came from, or did that really come from that second company you joined?
Yeah, it really came on later, when I sort of started to get more and more directly involved in energy, right? And then after that working for Johnson Matthey, I joined a startup that was directly in the energy sector around generation and specifically around renewable energy generation. Yeah, so that's kind of the path that I followed, and getting more and more involved in renewable energy from there. Yeah.
How did you see the space evolve as you've been in it? Because you've been in it now for, I don't know, how long? Is it like 10
Yeah,
years?
about 10, 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
imagine, 15 years ago, the energy sector looked quite different than it does today. What have you seen in the evolution? What are some trends that you've seen that have, picked up or died off, and you thought that they would pick up steam and they didn't?
Yeah, it's a really interesting sector in that it's evolving very quickly, and sometimes maybe from the outside it's not so visible. But if you think back, 15 years ago, you had a bill from your utility and you probably never thought about it, right?
Right.
I get power, I pay the bill. What do I care, right? And so since then, there's been a lot of trends and things and forces on the industry. So one of which is that, a lot of movement towards renewable energy. In the beginning, it was, by groups like California, who wanted to, reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well as improve local air quality. And now it's because it's cheaper in most cases to operate a wind or solar plant than it is to operate a fossil fuel generation source. So renewable energy, in summary, is really taking off dramatically. Sort of everything new that's getting built is basically a renewable energy source around the world, with some recent exceptions. So you've got a big sort of change in the sources of generation,
Hmm.
and those are very different, right? Think about, you used to have a power plant. If you drive past, the power plants in LA, you might see them on the side of the freeway. They're just a power plant and they've got a fence around them and they do what they do. But if
Yep.
you go look at a wind farm, if you see the old ones out by Palm Springs, right, there's hundreds of wind turbines out there, each one of which has gears and motors and moving things and sensors, right, and all kinds of control needs. And so it's a lot more complex to manage some big wind farms and things like that than it was to manage, a small power plant that was pretty dense. You had a full-time maintenance staff right there, easy to get to. So this shift to, hey, we're going to put some, lots of these spinning wind turbines in places, or we're going to put a very large solar farm in the middle of the desert. that has some challenges to it, and those challenges are largely solved by pulling in data, from those assets and using that to manage them.
Oh, wow.
Um,
So to kind of double click into this, so traditionally in the power plants, it was more like, standard manufacturing that had been time tested and proven out, where there,
mhm.
it's kind of a block of land in one place. There's lots of, pipes and moving parts, but it was probably largely based off of other manufacturing or other businesses that had lived before it. Now with some of these renewables like wind or solar, and it's funny as you mentioned that, I think about a flight I just took to New York last week, and for the first time I really saw a bunch of big solar arrays when I was flying, and I don't recall that having seen them really a lot previously.
Hmm.
But they're big and spread out and oftentimes remote. And to your point, there's a lot of data efficiencies that need to go in to make them actually work. Whereas before there was a power plant and big pipes, but concentrated movement of materials, whereas this
Hmm.
one is more spread out, which requires higher fidelity of data management in order to make them efficient and cost effective. Is that the trend that you're seeing?
That's right, exactly. So a new large solar farm that you might have seen, for example, might have between 1 and 2 million solar panels on
Huh.
it. Right. So, picture the panel is the size, the ones you see on people's roofs. That's one panel. So you put those out in the desert, and you might have 2 million of those on a very large solar site. Well, you can't even find the panel that might be offline, right, in that massive
Wow.
panels. So what people do these days is you fly a drone over it, and you scan the panels, and even that you have to sort of pull all the data in from the drone, process it, and figure out, hey, where are we losing power? What issues do we have, right? So techniques like that have become very commonplace. To use drones and solar is everyday thing that's done these days to find panels that are broken, right?
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic. That's exciting. It really is. It's not just everything. It feels like a lot of factors are coming together. Where it's the awareness of climate change. It's the advances in technology, but it also seems like it could also be these advances in data management that we've been seeing spark up across
mhm.
industries.
That's right. And it gets even more complex if you think about things like flex alerts and demand response, right? Which is those thermostats you hear about where your utility can turn them down a few degrees, right? So
Yeah.
how do you make that happen, right? You have to have data, you have to control them, you have to not mess it up so you don't do it at the wrong time, right? So the complexity of what we're doing now is far greater than before. Your power utility just gave you power. Well, now you can make your own power. You can store your own power. You could charge that. You can store that power in your car.
Yeah.
You could drive that car across town, plug it in, and pull more power off the grid at some unknown time of the day, right? You can have thermostats that now are controlled. So you put this all together, and you say, "Wow, yeah, there's a lot of exciting complexities in today's energy world and choices that you didn't have 15 years ago, right?"
Oh wow! So a thought that just comes to mind is this idea of you plugging in your car and you charging it. But I mean, I can just see an opportunity where maybe not a large scale, but maybe college kids or something would do this, where like they charge a car and then drive it to some other location where there's more of a demand for the energy. So they
Right.
sell it back to the system, like they drive it to the system it needs to be sold back to, where the price is slightly higher than where they were before, and they start doing arbitrage based on their car.
Yeah, that's right. It's a mobile battery, right? And they're not small, right? If you look at like the new Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the electric version of the most popular model car in America,
Yeah.
right? That battery's so big you can charge your house for 2 days on it. So you could do something like you're saying. You could charge it here, and then wait a certain number of hours and drive somewhere else and feed it back to the grid in some cases. So yeah, there's a lot of new ideas and things coming along that are enabled by all this new technology.
Alec, are we creating a business where we're an Uber for energy, where we'll go to like places with outages with F-150s and just show up and power
That's
people's
right.
homes for a day and then go back?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's exciting. Yeah.
That's so. What else do you see coming in the future? And does the Inflation Reduction Act, does that how does that play into, your 2 to 5 year view? And then I'd love to hear your 10 plus view, for whatever perspective you have right now.
Yeah, so really the Inflation Reduction Act has really, got things going at a tremendous clip here in the States.
And I'm sorry, I didn't
Um,
explain it. The Inflation Reduction Act actually
yeah.
has quite a bit of money that's been allocated for green energy and renewable energy. Alec, you have much closer to the numbers on that one.
That's right. So it's got everything from incentives to buying electric vehicles. It incentivizes, U.S.-based manufacturing of batteries. It incentivizes hydrogen production. It's really got a tremendous sort of broad suite of ways to help the transition here. Encouraging investments on the grid. So it's because this touches upon all kinds of areas. That piece of legislation is pretty impactful here, and so it's really helping to push things forward, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
how do you see it pushing things forward? Like, where do you see in a 2 to 5 year range, and then 10 plus?
yeah. So I mean, the first thing it's doing is it's really it's extended some of the the methods that people who invest in wind and solar, in particular in batteries, we're talking large utility scale batteries. It's incentivized the people who do that to do more of it, which is good. We have in some parts of the country we have lots of renewables, in some parts we don't. We have enough at some parts of the times of the day, and some parts of the day we don't. So it's really incentivizing people to do more of that
Mm.
core activity. And at the same time, it's going to encourage new areas that are still growing. One of those is hydrogen. There's a lot of discussion around. Um, you can take power from a wind or solar site, and you can do things like make hydrogen with it.
Mm.
And right, and so people have been making hydrogen for a long time, for decades, if not hundreds of years. But it's been done with traditional fossil fuel fire generation, and so now the act incentivizes doing it from renewable sources, and so that opens up some new opportunities, for using that as in different ways across the energy and transportation worlds.
So do you see hydrogen as a place for potential growth that we may see in the future? So it's that the renewables aren't just going to be in and of themselves an answer, but they're actually also going to potentially power additional energy resources.
hmm That's right. You can think about areas that are energy intensive. So, right, hydrogen's one example. I mean, you could think about desalinization as another one, right?
Mm.
So, people have different opinions about desalinating water, but one of the things is for sure about it uses a lot of energy. So, if you can pair it with a renewable energy source, then you've reduced that part of its environmental impact, right? So that starts to change the conversation around some of these different materials, like water, like chemicals, that you can think about. Hey, if we do that with renewables, can we think about them differently? Can we use them differently? Right.
That's incredible, and thank you for your perspective, Alec. It's very valued here as someone who's been doing it since before it was cool. It seems like it's really becoming a hot topic, but your deep industry knowledge of it is terrific, and thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's fun stuff. So it'd be interesting to see where everything goes.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time here. The last thing I want to ask you, and this is it's fun, it keeps us grounded here in LA, but what is the most LA thing that's happened to you? It can be product related, or it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, probably the one that comes to mind is when my brother and I were just in high school. Um, yeah, we were in the orchestra, and somehow the orchestra, our local orchestra down in Irvine, we got picked to be on a show, and we didn't know what the show was, but it turned out that it was Silver Spoons. So if you're,
That's
you know,
awesome.
going back a ways, right? And so our orchestra went up, and we were in a studio, and we were filming an episode of Silver Spoons, and Ricky Schroeder was playing the bassoon, and so we got to
Oh,
sit
that's
with him,
awesome.
and
He was one of you.
yeah.
He was part of the orchestra.
He was part of the orchestra in this episode, yeah. So we got to, we were supposed to be playing, and he would come in and do something and go out. So it was pretty fun.
That's incredible. Yeah, that is one of the most LA things I can possibly imagine. If you're just in the high school orchestra as you would be normally, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on a TV set with a very popular then and still currently TV star now.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Love that
That was
one.
fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Alec. Really appreciate your time here.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Ethan.
telling us about renewables.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. That was great.
Yeah. Also, like to thank our sponsors. That's PMALA, the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. You can find them at pma.la, as well as Uruit. You can find them at uruit.com. I want to thank you all for listening to us once again, and we'll see you next time on Product in LA.